Hello, welcome to Get Your Mind On. I'm Lori Stohs. So as we continue through our Get Your Mind Off series on our senses, today we're going to focus on the sense of touch. So when we think about touch, touch is that sense of ours that when we really think about it, it's our first sense that we have when we're touched as a baby. And it's many times the last sense to leave. When we think about the touch of a human being as they're departing their life and how important that is, when sometimes the words are not there, when sometimes the vision is gone, that we still have that sense of touch that makes someone feel comfortable. So when you think about touch, how much touch do we have? There's 5 million sensories in our body, on our skin, around touch, which is a lot. So when we think about all those sensory nerves being touched, our fingertips in themselves have 4 million sensories. And so when you think about touch, there's lots of connections to touch. So let's just think about coming home from a day of work. We come home and we open the door. Well, you may have a metal door, you may have a wood door, and you may touch that door and think about what is that touch. When you walk into the, to the floor, it could be carpet or it could be tile. Is there a sense of touch with the texture of the carpet on your feet? Or the tile, the coolness or the chill of the tile after you take your shoes off? You might recognize that, gosh, your feet are a little uncomfortable from your shoes that day. Maybe they're a little tired and sore. So you take your socks off and you relax a little bit and rub your feet. And you think about that touch of those calluses maybe, or the smoothness of your skin. And then you sit on the couch and you think about resting for a little bit before maybe you go into dinner or spend time with your family. Oh, but don't forget you gave someone a hug when you walked in. That touch of that person, or you petted your dog or your cat or your animal when they came in. And then you sat on the couch and felt the texture of the fabrics or the smoothness of the leather. And then you moved that blanket that was a little bit fluffy, a little bit like the vest I have on today, with a little bit of softness. So when we think about just what may happen in 5 minutes' time when you walk in the door, look at how many times we've touched something. We've touched many textures. We've had temperatures, right? We may have hot or cold. We may have soft or rough. We may have that the hair on an animal, or touching someone's hair as you give them a hug. The skin touch, those touches of skin. And so when we think about all those areas of touch, it's amazing how much we touch, how many times we really stop and take that all in. And so for many of us, have you really thought about all those things that you touch in a day and all those textures? Because there's so many textures. And I recognize this. I myself hadn't really noticed that when I was traveling with someone, sometimes when we have some spare time, we would in the evening go into shopping or to a mall. And I was always one to touch things. I've always been one to touch fabrics and to feel, is it soft, is it hard, is it, what's the texture like? Because there's an emotional connection to that texture. So thinking about that, you want to really take some time to think about, what does texture mean to you? What does touch mean to you? Now, some of us, as I think about translating touch into the environment of others, I was working with a client and they were wanting to provide a little bit more service. And so they were doing a role play of walking with people and touching them. And I leaned over to my HR leader and I said, of this company, and I said, you can't teach touch. And he looked at me and he's like, oh my gosh, you're right. Some people are natural touchers when it comes to touching and liking to hug and liking to touch, and some people aren't so much, right? Some people who would prefer not to have a hug, you kind of get the wall, the wall or the brick wall or the board when you're giving them a hug, and you have to recognize that space of someone. So touch is a private thing. We all have different levels of touch, but you might just keep that in mind as you think about that sometimes some of us love to touch and some of us are not so much about the touch. But you just have to recognize that others may be uncomfortable with that, so knowing that and guarding that. So I really want you to also think about, as we think about getting our mind off, as we're so busy, as it's getting closer and closer to the holidays, I want you to step back this week and think about touch. Think about, as we approach the holiday, all those textures that you have, that you touch. It might be the tree, it might be the feathers, on that tree up there. There's just so many different ones, but are we really in tune to appreciating those hugs, that little bit of touch on the fingers or on the hand, those sensory moments that we get a moment to our brain that's really about that feeling. And when we think about touch, you think about all of that. Sometimes touch feels really good and is really relaxing to people. For positive charge this week, just take 5 minutes out of your schedule. Maybe 5 minutes when you're sitting with your family, or when you have some time when it's busy this week, and just appreciate all the textures and all the things that you touch. You know, touch is an important sense of ours, and we really don't stop and take the time to really appreciate all the textures and all the chill of the air and the roughness and the smoothness and really even the therapy that touch brings to many of us as it decreases our stress levels and sometimes makes you feel very comfortable. And touch is just one of those things that we will always have and we need to share with others. It relaxes us, it calms us, and it allows us to get our mind off. Thanks for joining us today, and remember to get your mind off.